just troublemakers that have been recruited and trained. There's not much you can do about it right now. The civility issue is, I got a call today from Representative McCollum's office in St. Paul. Tomorrow, the so-called Tea Party guys are supposed to show up at 11 a.m. tomorrow. And they're trying to get the media to come in and put these guys on the hot seat.
Where is it?
The reason I'm on the air is because an assessment of the audience of KFAI a couple of years ago indicated that there was a vacuum for a general public affairs program that really addressed local and regional issues, and that is what my bag is. I come to KFAI after 50 years in broadcasting. This is my 50th year. And I'm an old Brown graduate, Brown Institute of Broadcasting graduate, 59, and have been in the business in various radio and television stations ever since, with some lapses working in public affairs or public policy or with government, where I was the chief of staff to the mayor of Highland Park, Michigan, for instance, or working for the state of Minnesota as the Deputy Director of Consumer Services. Things like that. But generally speaking, I have been either a disc jockey or a journalist in broadcasting all those years. And in more recent years have become much more inclined to see media as a community and capacity building opportunity. That is, for people to solve problems on their own hook in the communities in which they live. And that is essentially what is behind Truth to Tell. I don't want to ever again be connected to a network as I was with ABC in Detroit. I don't want to be connected to any of the local network stations, which I believe have lost their sense of what news media should really be about. After the last 30 years or so, there's been little or no understanding that what people need to know to govern themselves, which is what I think news is about, is what people need to know to govern themselves. All we get pretty much are crime, weather, and sports at the 10 o'clock news every single night.
Lots of happy talk.
And lots of happy talk between the two as they transition and segue and do all these things on the 10 o'clock news. So it gets a little more serious on the 5 and 6 o'clock news, but not much. So we don't get what's being discussed at the city councils and the county boards and even in the state legislative committees and stuff, so that we know, even if it's sausage making, what kind of policies are being developed at the legislature and in these other bodies that control our lives on a daily basis. And so it really renders us too ignorant to really do anything about it. And I think that what we've done is we've built up about 3 generations of people who really just don't understand that what a newscast ought to do is be informative and not entertaining. And what a newscast really could do is to make us all aware of our responsibilities as citizens of our community, to resolve issues as best we can in our neighborhood level or our city level or even at the state. And until we change how network stations like CCO, KSTP, Fox 9 is pretty good, by the way, comparatively, but not as good as they ought to be covering issues. And really, now I'm not talking about Fox News, cable news. I'm talking about local Fox television station. The old Channel 9 that sold itself off to Fox still does a better local newscast almost than anybody else.
Exactly.
It gets a better, more intellectual audience, believe it or not. So, what I consider media literacy then is understanding these things. People need to understand that what the role of media in public affairs really is and should be. What it is that it is an entertainment medium right now that is defining our culture in very distorted ways. That distortion gives us a very poor image of people of color, that we see flashing lights and whatever burn, whatever, what did they say? If it bleeds, it leads. So if you see in the first 15 minutes of a newscast, a lot of flashing lights, a lot of arrests, cop cars and fire engines, and if they can make everything flash, it's very entertaining, but it doesn't tell you a damn thing about what's going on in the world. And what it does is that it gives you a distorted view of what life in the city is really about. It says that there's more crime than there really is. Who's committing it than really are committing it. Who the villains are when they are no more villainous than a lot of the people living in suburbs. But that's what we get. And it's always about somebody hurting somebody else. Is what we're getting in the news. And that's not news. That's not news. So I think the sooner we can understand that media is defining our culture instead of reflecting it. It's not reflecting reality. It's defining it for us as viewers, as consumers of the news. And I think literacy speaks to the issue of needing to know how that affects us. And we don't want to admit, as human beings, as American consumers, that in fact, messages that are repeated over and over and over again are having an effect on our own psyche. We don't want to admit that marketing works on us. It's like being a drunk. You just don't want to admit that you're a drunk. But you must take that first step and understand that you're powerless over marketing messages if you don't go, receive them with the skepticism that they deserve. And it's the same with a newscast. Don't believe what you hear and see unless, question everything. A good reporter should be questioning everything, and even those reporters don't do that. So understanding that role and relationship between you and your news media, and the news media and the public policy issues that we need to understand in order to govern ourselves on a day-to-day basis, is what media literacy is about. And that is, I think we were cultivated into an audience that said, yeah, I'm fine with this. I think it's more settling for something, resigning ourselves to the kind of newscast we're going to get, rather than saying, this is really what I want to see. Because I don't know anybody that doesn't complain about the 10 o'clock news. Do you know anybody that really thinks that's the greatest thing in the world? No. So you see, as I look at it, the issues of is it our fault? Do we tell these outfits, this is what the public wants? That's what they want you to say. Part of their marketing effort is to say, we're just giving the people what they want. It's like General Motors, say General Motors. What's good for General Motors is good for the country. What's good for CCO is good for the public. And so as soon as you start complaining about it, the news directors all throw up their hands and the station managers all throw up their hands and they say, oh, we're just giving the public what they want. How do you know? You don't know. They haven't really asked that question.
Well, they do have data to point it out. They've got ratings, right?
No, because you're not given a choice. See, the difference, Bruce, is that we're not being given the choices that we should be given. And it is true that 10 o'clock newscasts are losing audience in that respect. because, you know, and a lot of us are abandoning 10 o'clock news. I haven't watched a 10 o'clock newscast in a long, long time. I get better news from Jon Stewart and The Daily Show because he has kept his focus on the fact that he's a satirical newscast.
Yeah.
He's a fake newscast.
Yeah, right.
Well, in fact, it isn't as fake as all that, because he goes after the real news. And he's making fun of it, but he also exposes it. And it's interesting to see it done quite that way.